When fermentation is complete, the beer undergoes a conditioning process. All that really means is that the yeast is cleaning up some nasty flavors left over from fermentation. If you tried to serve your beer right away, you would have some pretty interesting tasting beer. So the beer conditions generally for a few days, for a few weeks. For the very, very strong beers, that alcohol flavor needs to mellow, so the beer is not very, very harsh. So we make a quadrupel, for instance. It's 12% alcohol. That one's actually made down at the tap room. But that conditions for about 6 months before we serve it, because it has to. All right, when fermentation and conditioning are complete, generally the beer is filtered. Most commercial breweries will filter their beer. The way we do it is that we pump the beer through a igneous lava rock, and that will free the beer from the yeast, porous rock. You don't have to do this. It makes the beer look pretty. It doesn't add anything in terms of flavor. It's just a purely cosmetic thing. Generally, for wheat beers, people tend to leave those unfiltered. I don't know why, off the top of my head. It's just part of the look. But again, in terms of flavor or anything like that, it's rather unimportant. And the brewers hate doing this. Apparently, filtering is a really, really big pain. So that's a little bit about the filtration process. All right, finally, packaging. Packaging happens in 3 ways in this building. There's another way, that's canning, which isn't done here. It's done up in Wisconsin. So if you've ever had our cans of summer lager, those are made in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. They're not made here. We don't have a canning line. Grundyville is over there. It's just our cutesy name for that walk-in refrigerator. There are tanks in there that are about 10 barrels in capacity or so, and they feed the front bar with probably the freshest beer you'll ever have, short of drinking it just straight out of the fermentation tank. So we serve very, very fresh, very, very tasty beer here. The kegerator is in the back, over by the kegs. Unfortunately, I can't take you over there, but there is a machine that fills and pressurizes the kegs, and of course those are sent around town to the various bars and restaurants. Some of the kegs are kept here and sold to people like you, so if you want to have a party with Schlafly beer, that stuff is made on this line just like everything else is. And then finally, the bottling line. This is this large swath of industry that you see in front of you. This is the bottling line. And of course the bottles are up there stacked on those pallets where the process begins. All of the bottles are brown. Who knows why the bottles are brown? Light does what to beer? Yes. Hint, animal. It does something animal-like to the beer.
Skunky.
Skunky, exactly right. When you add hops to beer, there are volatile chemicals in hops that are going to be present in your finished product. When those chemicals hit ultraviolet light, they turn into skunk juice, essentially. It's not poisonous. It tastes, it might taste bad depending on your perspective. Some brewers will put that in there intentionally. Nobody's ignorant of this process. The big commercial brewers that use clear and green glass are well aware of the fact that that will skunk the beer. In some cases, you've got a company like Miller, for example. They use clear bottles, but they don't make skunky beer. They actually genetically engineered a hop variety that wouldn't skunk when it was light spread. When you have that much money, I guess you can do whatever you want. This building that we have, our laboratory, is not quite that sophisticated, so we just have to use the brown bottles. Other companies, like Heineken, I was told, tried to do the same thing that Miller did, and their customers couldn't. So it just depends on what the product is that you're going for. A little bit about the process itself. A machine removes the bottles from the pallets and sets them on the conveyor belt. And from there, the bottles are going to hit a series of processes to get the beer ready for packaging. First, the bottles are sanitized. Second, they are pumped with carbon dioxide and then filled and capped. And what that's doing is forcing oxygen out of the bottles and limiting the exposure of the beer to the air, to make sure that we have a long shelf life for our beer and just limiting the things that can go wrong with the product. Next, the bottles hit the labeler, which is right in front of you guys. This, as the name suggests, labels the bottles. The other thing that it does is that it puts a date on it. If you've ever seen one of our bottles, it will say bottled with love on X. And that's telling you when your beer was bottled and thus how fresh your beer is. Generally speaking, you want to drink your beer within 140 days of that date. For weaker beers, such as the Hefeweizen, for example, that's going to go south a little bit closer to 100 days. For the very, very lethally strong beers that we make, you don't even have to worry about them. You can keep them for 3, 4, 5 years if you want. In fact, if you head into the gift shop and you see barley wines or imperial stouts out there, you'll notice they have a vintage on them. They've got a date. It'll say 2007, 2008, and so forth. I would encourage you to seek out the older bottles. Not that the newer bottles aren't good, but the older bottles have had time to mature, and they're very, very smooth. But again, you stick to under 140 days, in most cases, you're going to be all right. One more machine I want to show you guys over here by the table. This is the filling machine, if you will. This is the machine that puts the bottles in the packages, in the 6-packs, 12-packs, 24-packs. You'll notice that it says barbecue on it. It doesn't do that. I don't know why it says barbecue on it. But the boxes travel down on this lower conveyor belt. The bottles are up here, and then they fall down these metal finger-like protrusions into their respective cases. And then those are loaded onto pallets and shrink wrapped until the distributors come and pick them up. So this concludes the portion of the tour when you're not drinking free beer.